Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful empowered harmonizers. We are zooming in and focusing in on a great viewer question, and that is, why does a narcissist parent essentially treat their children as an adult? In other words, in inappropriate age relations with their children. This is a great question, and of course, it's very damaging. Uh, when you're a child, because the children is extremely impressionable, and they soak up their environment like a sponge. So in other words, the emotions, the things that are said, the looks, the body language, and most importantly, those things which kind of hit either like top anger, you know, pitches, screams, yodels, uh, chokeholds, why is this happening? And so because if there's fear, in the parents, that sends a ripple effect. So there's a direct connection between the environment and children, and how they posit and position themselves, and how they relate to themselves in the world, which is hugely and vastly important. So when there's a narcissist parent, someone who has a pathological sense of their own self-importance, basically their own interests, their own needs, their own wants, their own desires get in the way. It's like a true obstacle. They're not seeing people for who they are. They're seeing only people where they fall short from where that narcissist needs or wants you to be. So a narcissist, can sort of feel that they have this entitlement and should only relate to, people of certain position or stature. The VP who only wants to, talk with VPs. The person who, and I'm just going to pull this in a little here, the VP who only wants to talk to the VP. I don't want to talk to this salesperson, customer service. Get me the manager. I've got the gold Rolex, I've got the shoes, or the lady with the purse. They just have their nose in the air, and they can't get down from their high steel horse. They're basically, that's narcissism sort of exemplified, or what does it look like? So in other words, it's all about them. They don't see what's reality going in front of them, even though they appear very capable, competent of understanding and relating, because you see them extremely social or affable or different with other people, their friends, teachers, other public acquaintances. They have a very public versus a private persona. In other words, they're always on display. So these people who are narcissists, they also have a lack of empathy. And it's not just like, I don't care. They literally have a brain. They have a lack of, mirror neuron activity, where they're able to sort of just be there. And be there, which means a lot. It's like there's so much, because they're not really there, meaning in the present, full body, smiling, whatever it is. They're only sort of projecting the gap of their unmet needs and what they feel that child should be. In other words, a child who needs to be, you need to be able to go to their level. They're crying, they're scared, they have questions. Their siblings did something, they heard something at school, they felt something, they need to talk, they need reassurance, they need hug, they need to be treated as a child, they need mothering. Okay, they need fathering. It's not like you're my new star, or you're my new lawyer, you're my doctor, you're the new person who's going to work on the car, the computer, or set my bank account straight. So in other words, a narcissist they look at people, including their children, only as extensions of themselves. They don't have an ability to sort of see them for who they are and their own needs through a lens of honesty and approval and acceptance. Instead, it's rejection, alienation, isolation, and sort of this depersonalization, talking to them as if they're not even there, or if they're disappointed, unhappy, age inappropriate reference, treating them like they should have skipped their whole childhood and they should just be going out and making $1, getting a job, having whatever grades, people over, the way that they, it's the vision that the narcissist wants for their child. In other words, so it can often be like you feel like you're not being related to. And that's that present moment. That's that heart, eye contact, the electrical energy of the heart taking place. Someone full body who's not just whirling things around in their head about what's going on with them. They're able to be there fully present, which means they're by many standards, empty. In other words, they're able to receive, hear, listen, and then provide the guidance by virtue of their age, be with you in that moment, hold hands, pick you up, rock you as a baby, as a child, as a 2-year-old, allow you to go through those stages, and be there as a child. And instead, those natural behaviors get, they treat that as if they're inadequate, as if, how could you be, age, how could you be, 2, 3, 4, 5, because they don't have an ability to understand and relate and basically set aside all that's going on in order to be there and be in that child's world, and namely empathize and sort of and understand the needs for that child to be raised up. In other words, the child doesn't come out as like a preformed adult that just needs orders and and showing who's the boss and setting hierarchy. In other words, they miss the boat, they miss the mark, they miss the eye contact, the heart center. They don't have, they're living sort of in their future of what they want, or they're living in the past of what they didn't get. So, and they're sort of projecting all that very complicated adult mayhem and drama onto this poor, undeveloped, innocent child essence. Like I think a viewer had so aptly said it, a childhood essence, which is basically, you're stumbling through, you need smiles, you need approval. The narcissist, they do not give the very vital, the very vital components, energy that require empathy and being in the present. Basically being able to get outside of your needs to be there for another and not be threatened or feel intimidated or inadequate, because there's a tremendous inadequacy at the heart of narcissism. There's a great problem with their ability to what they call attachment disorder, or attach or bond with people. So there's this sort of bond deficit, if you will. It's really heavy. It's really painful, especially if you're talking about your parents. And, a child is feeling so then they go out into the world, which could be their kindergarten, their first, second, and they don't have that sort of backing, even though they're dressed, or, we're talking about an internal relating, and relating to them as an adult. In other words, why don't you just help take a load off of me? In other words, a narcissist can only perceive others as an external extension of themselves in what they need and who they want to be. It has nothing to do with anyone else. In other words, you hear about the golden child, and then you hear about the scapegoat, in the narcissist family system, because it is a system. It's a cycle, unfortunately, where an they haven't done anything to deserve it, but there's usually a golden child who can do no wrong, even then they do all sorts of wrong. But in the narcissist's eyes, the child might be better looking, smarter, intelligent, male, female, whatever it is, you know, that that child is an extension of that narcissist needs. Like, they need their child to be handsome, to be intelligent, to be wealthy. Like, it doesn't have anything to do with the very child or baby, infant, 2 or 3 year old. So that there's a gap then that's created, more pronounced than, I would say, a generational gap. It's a relational gap. And I'm getting back to, why do they not give you your childhood? Why do you feel, that the childhood is, a lot of people who have narcissist parents, I feel that they feel that their childhood is completely blacked out. They didn't have a childhood. They don't remember anything. They don't have any fond memories. They don't remember their parents smiling. They don't have then this reservoir then to call upon, either in the course of their life or in their middle or adulthood. In other words, because it's almost like you need to do a remedial, because it's kind of like a library. It's like your first books, and it's like, if you didn't get that first set, kind of foundational, then it makes all the other sort of ongoing grades like really increasingly and compoundingly difficult. So getting back to that question, why do they treat a child as an adult? Because of that lack of empathy. They have a complete disregard, dismissiveness, lack of caring, but like lack of acknowledgement and validation, which means they don't have the ability to be there with you in those feelings and be there. Oh, I understand you're sad. And then say, and help a child to identify what sadness is. And that by that, child then being, and identifying, learning their very first feelings with with an adult who, by virtue of their own life experiences, can say, oh, don't worry, your knee is going to hurt, or, your elbow is going to hurt, or your heart's going to hurt. You didn't get this toy, or you didn't get that part in the play, or you didn't get this or that. It's going to be okay. And then we'll be able to tell you it's going to be okay. And then that child gets, even though this, it's going to be okay. And then they get that certainty and validation. It's like, it doesn't become then this big overwhelm, which is known as overwhelm, when things are very difficult to manage. So they pepper in oftentimes a lot of disappointment, exaggeration about failures, and acting as if there's a permanency, like an object permanency to the failures of those. In other words, there's nothing you can do to please me. And then so the child is forever feeling like no matter what they do, it's going to be met with inefficacy, or they'll try to overachieve, to try to win the approval, or constantly be that victory, like winning out over those feelings. And sometimes what happens when that isn't there? Can the child then manage, if there isn't quote unquote victory? Or in other words, can they deal with what is, sadness or something difficult to manage, such as the more negative emotions, fear, anxiety, doubt, trepidation, uneasiness, and instead of it leading to agony, okay, like this viewer, said, they're treating you as someone who you are not, okay, they're treating you, as someone you're not. And then so people then try to, children, of course, they have a natural inclination, which the narcissists exploit. Oh, it's just a very, I think, a very painful, tedious, and insidious type of child abuse is the narcissist sort of depersonalization of those individuals who they are seeking to sabotage, sort of target, scapegoat, especially children who are needing something. They need food. They need to be taught how to cut the food. They need to be taught how to read. They need to be taught how to clean. They need their parents to put aside their games, their toys, and be there in the child's world and walk with them, with two hands and show, oh, this is how we pick it up. This is how, and they're right there with them. If you've ever seen that, it's an amazing thing. I remember being on I used to do like a lot of benefits and things of this nature, and seeing a grandma, and I was working with someone like as a financial planner, and a grandma who was working with her grandchild, and she was just right there. It was like the very first pie. They're like, we'll be right with you. We're making this pie. And she's like, okay. And she's like all talking, all, whispering to the child, okay, not in a big adult voice. We've got to make, and okay, we're going to, and you pick it up with two hands. Let me see your two hands. Okay, and this is how you got, and just being there with every like sort of microsecond of that, they were all focused. So in other words, a narcissist is lacking that ability to sort of to focus and be present for another, most importantly a child, which basically, I mean, do we need to explain why a child needs a grown-up to understand and navigate their feelings? So a narcissist who, if you've ever, it's very sad. It's very, very sad when a narcissist will exploit their child, and sort of and treat the other children as an adult. So, for example, I witnessed just a seething narcissist, young, just completely losing, okay, screaming, okay, in front of her children, very impressionable, who are 5 or 6, and then a baby, okay. The mother the baby was screaming, hungry, maybe had a wet diaper, obviously, okay. The baby was screaming. The other child was there, and the mother was just completely ignoring, tuning them out. I mean, they were not but 5 feet away. I mean, and last time I checked, it's a mother's responsibility when they have their child to feed, clothe, shelter. And they were using the children as like pawns to get something at a register, which she thought was coming or due her. In other words, and then just letting the children scream louder and louder, knowing that it was an irritant or deterrent or out of order to have that. In other words, using the children blaring scream to say, look, you're not gonna give this to me and this poor screaming child. In other words, the children had nothing to do with what this person was demanding, okay, at the register. And then, and she just even moved the baby even up and a little bit closer so that the screaming was right up there at the register, and not giving the baby, obviously it needed a bottle, and just, and didn't look at the baby. I mean, I had never seen something what I thought was so cruel or abusive, and I'm going, oh my God, in this day and age, like you're using your children, like you're torturing, you're traumatizing these children, and they just don't even care. And so it's very difficult to compute. How could a human being who is a parent, maybe that's all they have to do that day, how can they forgo that sort of responsibility and use them as a pawn to sort of, and then until that child got, the mother was sort of fumbling, and then the child pulled out a small bottle, and gave it to the baby, okay, that they had put. I go, oh my gosh, the 5-year-old is taking care of this baby as if this is like normal. I mean, I know it's good to contribute, but there's a depersonalization. See, this is, you know, very abusive, and it might be upsetting, but and then the baby couldn't, wasn't quite able to, and then it was so funny because the 6-year-old then goes talking to the baby in very adult terms. No, you have to push on it, push on it. And the 6-year-old was trying to tell the baby to push. The baby, I don't think, understands the word push, and it's taking its hand to try to push and make the milk come out. So, and then it was just the adult was completely oblivious. And so, and then, in other words, why don't you, this whole leads to a whole world of false accusations and sort of depersonalization, which means treating you as sort of an object, sort of disregard for emotions, feelings, concerns, considerations, which are all valid and authentic. Valid. And M. Scott Peck, if you ever, Scott, study M. Scott Peck, he believes that the foundation of all mental illness is at some point pathological lying. So one then must swallow depersonalization, okay, which then leads to sort of a feeling of unreality, which is not that person's sort of natural organic chemistry. It's because of the toxin of complete disregard in the environment. So you've heard me, on the channel talk about the needs for touch, for warmth. And oftentimes, if there is this deficit, sort of this big, I didn't get it, and it keeps, I didn't get it, I don't have it. It's sort of running through your mind, and you're a 40-year-old, 20-year-old, I didn't get, I don't have, then you need to sort of tune in and listen. And so even though your cries or needs as a child were met with disregard, that child wasn't able to, basically carry from one developmental stage to another, sort of in sequential. You had to go from this to you're an adult, sorry, you're over here, and then all the while you're trying to, in agony, cope, okay? Agony, okay, that's different from pain. We're talking about a long-standing, chronic, ongoing emotional pain that can be ongoing for those other people. So, and it's never a problem for a narcissist to treat a child as an adult, because it's off the hook responsibilities for them. You better cook, clean, make your bed. In other words, then there's the expectation of age-advanced responsibilities before even the training. And then, feeling like you didn't meet expectations. So it's like the setting up for failure and then accusing that of being a failure. So it's like they're trying to control the environment. So the why is, because they need to control. They're like, I've got to get, I've got to have a whatever. They usually will have some sort of big, grandiose, or something super important to them thing. Even though a child is a super important thing, to them, there's something more important. And sort of that is sort of picked up by children. That is painful. I mean, that is almost akin to, like, you almost don't deserve to be living, but then you're sort of among the living. There's this sort of, lack of validation, simply presence. And then when that children grows up, they then have a constant fear going with them because they don't have that remedial experience of being face to face with their own emotions, being able to recognize, resolve, and move through them. Like, you got angry and you hit the kid with a bat, or you can't do that, walking through and not saying, you're bad, you hit it with a bat, the kid, maybe was a kid, maybe it saw the parent do something similar. I mean, but the whole problem is there's then the accusative nature of being a child, You're accused of being innocent. You're accused of being a young daughter. You're accused of being a young son. And then there's this embarrassment that you should be as human, as if that's dirty, as if it's bad, vile, can't be tolerated here, put up and shut up, like, in other words, you're going to get this instead, and then that's what we're having. In other words, it's a control, because they have an inadequacy to kind of, they take it as a challenge. So we'll get that into a moment, but I think what's important and wrapped up in the question is the resulting derogatory reference, self-reference, and then world sort of global sort of incorporating of that. In other words, it goes global, because the narcissist, I think they create this sort of object permanence, meaning like you'll never grow, you'll never please me, you'll never, and so the child then is harboring, I will never. Man, that is one of the worst feelings you can ever have, which is which is not an appropriate sort of agony that you should be tossed to in the first place. And so, and that word agony is a really important, because it's not just a hurt, when the child is then sort of, if you don't chronically meet expectations, then you're going to be in a chronic state, or if it's like intermittent, and then once in a while you hit it, and then the rest, then it's going to be even more hard. The child is going to work even harder to attain that which they cannot, that which is the approval of a parent. It's like they'll keep, bringing the carrot even higher and higher, and look, you didn't make it, and they pulled, employers will do this too, to their salespeople, to squeeze them out, get more out of them. Next thing you know, they're working harder to get that little more carrot, and now just do this and to get the same, and they, and so this then becomes a little bit of a toil and a problem. So it's then mimicked. What I'm really trying to emphasize here is that then it sets up a pattern, not only of self-reference for that child, but a self-degradation, which is really vastly dangerous and hazardous for that child to have to go through. It's like having a cancer that you have to be secret of, or a pain just that you can't ever talk about, or you can't even articulate. So there's this really grave feeling of it will never get better, or something like it just, and so that depersonalization, depersonalization and then derealization, it occurs when you persistently or repeatedly have the feeling that you're observing yourself, or, just like, this is not right, like, I just don't belong, like, you don't feel the inclusive. So in other words, it's not, your feelings aren't included, your voice isn't included, your concerns, your interests. So can you see then how it then becomes ripple effect, is that individual gets older, that they then develop a repeated pattern where then they're going to continue to reaffirm, even towards themselves, even if the narcissist isn't around, they'll continue to put themselves in situations where they cannot win, where they'll constantly fail. They'll just, they won't have sort of the right built, the right foundation. And that person will go searching and just feel like that they don't, and then they have a difficulty, they might feel shy, they have difficulty reality testing, applying for a job, going for this, so it can create a whole host of issues for that person if that child is not acknowledged and validated. And to go through those developmental stages, because children do go through developmental stages, where they get sort of a competency, and then they can move through it, and they get the hang of it, and yeah, they can develop their own personality, and you want to pull that out of them. And you have to do that, but narcissist parents can oftentimes then be jealous. Seems strange, but of their own children. Because they could outshine them, outgrow them, outdo them, call them out, be right, point out their humanness. So sometimes the narcissist then won't even, go into communication, discussion, or even have like that intimacy. In other words, they can't be open about their feelings. They find that they're being personally challenged, even though you're just asking them something. They back it down. Oh, they put a judgment spin on it that you're bad for some reason. They got to pepper in some sort, and then don't buy it, And so the problem is that children then who are supposed to look up, admire, and emulate then their parents. I mean, that's just what it is in a realistic way, where they see the parents working things out, even if things happen. They see that so and so doesn't lose their cool, or that it's they don't always have to be the center of attention. So and then so the children who they do need to be the center of attention to eventually be good in sports, to be and then to be not in the center of attention. In other words, to realize the difference between the two and how to share. These are lessons that the parent can teach, and children will learn by observing, by witnessing. And so the narcissist oftentimes doesn't engage in those formative behaviors that the child is needing to be formatting, to be, it's not that they're like exact duplicates, but to learn. This is not rocket science, but it's like a narcissist will not be present and not be in the same conducive energy. So now we're talking about quantum field energy and then healing, which is that I'm okay, you're okay, it's going to be okay. And there's a sense of knowing or okayness, meaning that everything is okay, especially you, and not based on things external, but that you as a person, as the little person, your little smile, your hair, your body, however it is, there, but the problem is, when the narcissist then does a lot of complaining about the child. Oh, look at you, your tooth, it's supposed to be that way. Look at you, your hair is supposed to be that way. And the child's like, oh gosh, I've got a terrible this, I've got a terrible that. And then and then that person who's the authority, is saying that this is it. And then that person then develops a negative, low self-esteem and negative self-reference. It's just, and it's to the facility and expedience of the narcissist. In other words, it's because they don't have the time, the ability, the presence, etc., that we see that sort of pattern establishing. And so then, it's not too late to acknowledge and accept what had happened and then what is missing, and to say, okay, I got it, I can see that. And then even though it hurts to say, I didn't have a good childhood, even though, or I didn't have a good teenagehood or young adulthood, don't let that be your identity, which means a lot of people who feel stuck or repeated, they're part of their identity. They feel is still too solid. It's the identity isn't fluid then. If you're still sort of, if you learn to grow, you'll realize then that a narcissist will then incorporate, that sort of, and repeat that to their child, where then the child will then have a negative identity, which is going to take some work and understanding, but you can do it. You don't worry about it. It's like extremely daunting, but you can grow through it, and you will learn, and you can engage in the quantum field when you sort of completely just let go of that narcissist behavior, and just say, what, I'm not responsible for an abuser's behavior. You're putting way too much responsibility. You're allowing the narcissist to play hot potato and say, it's all, you're this, and it's easier for them to live in that pathological lying. Why? Because they don't have, it's more gratifying. That's just who they are. It's who they're built to be. You can't change a maple tree for an oak tree. I mean, it's just who it is. So the moment you can embrace that and really just see that it has nothing to do with you, and you can get sort of that quantum field where you allow them to be all that they can be, abuser and all, and it doesn't have to interfere or take a bite or a hunk out of your I am or your energy, or just put a negative sort of patch or place still within you, so you can be completely free. That quantum field is about being completely submersed in release of that whole, in allowing them their full right to be, and then knowing then, and acknowledging and validating that you have rights. You have some very important human rights that you need to get in touch with, live with, and sort of get to know a little bit, and then remove that sort of holding on, the arm in arm, as you see your identity as it was shaped by an abuser. To what degree can you say, okay, I get it now, and or to say by a narcissist parent who didn't give you the mothering or the fathering, and then you find that you're then over extending yourself in other ways because you're trying to make up for some deficit or feeling of lack that you did not get. So it's important to make that unconscious sort of conscious if you're going through and understanding that little innocent child, that wounded inner child. So you have to kind of say, okay, and because you're the one who sets the temperature and the flame on the wound, and sometimes it'll really flare up, other times it'll really extinguish. And to what degree are you okay with a wound being extinguished? In other words, so when you really get into advanced healing and start getting into that quantum field where your I am is an undamaged, more powerful being than the abuser. When you can live in that truth and in that belief and get to that you're more powerful than the abuser, is really important, because you've got the on off switch within you, but the abuser is slapping your your hand every time you're going for it. So eventually you know, if every time you've reached for your dreams and you've been smacked down or said, I'm this or I'm that, you know, you have to acknowledge and validate that and go, okay, I get it. To some degree, you want to give yourself an I get it moment, you know, and allow your recovery dates to be filled with the I get it, and then the next step, you know, what that means. I let go of, you know, I let go of that. I let go of that sort of objectification, lack of validation, you know, and it's okay for me to validate myself and then really up your game in your internal repertoire, you know, really up your game and saying, like, da-da, I'll step in for you, you know, and then you're like, I've got you through this. Let's be cautious here, you know, and then you develop a little bit of internal guidance and then allow sort of your higher self that knows things to take over, you know, and then I know, and then because the feeling sometimes of I know is a foreign experience or feeling, because for you to be okay, oh boy, that's never been my truth. You know, how many people who had narcissist parents, like the viewers on the channel, who say, you know, I couldn't own my truth. It was too scary. It was too much. It was age inappropriate. Basically, you know, you're age 6, you know, you're trying to set up a real estate transaction for yourself and get internal plumbing, and you're going to figure this all out. I mean, how many feel that your childhood was robbed because of too many, you know, of these situations? So you have to claim, you know, you have to kind of claim some things for yourself, and not doing it like angrily, although you can do it passionately and just be like, you know what, I have a lot of happiness that needs revisiting, if that's okay. I have a lot of being okay to revisit, if that's okay. You know, in other words, look at where instead of all those up and down and chases, you know, to what degree can you just say, to hands off the chase, hands off the merchandise, just hands off. Just it's so difficult, especially with the devices, but mean, to what degree can you experience and surrender and experience a sort of, I am in a great place, you know, and then call that in, and call that, even though it might not be shared with that feeling that you want, it can't really sort of, it's hard to have it exactly shared with that, but if that is your case, you might need to be as a child and not be, you know, but you might need to be playful and play around and play in the basement or play in the field or play riding bikes, or you might need to, you know, find what it is to become engrossed in something that is fulfilling, where you are actually then building. Because the narcissist sort of is the old, you know, pull out the little special stick when you get building something. Nope, they're not there. You know, so realize that there's going to be some new patterning required, and you know, it can be overwhelming. I can't do this. Is going to be, you know, meaning earlier you're told, what's the flip-flop? Were you told you can't? No, you're terrible. You're, you know, don't own all those hot potatoes. Just give them back to the produce department. I really don't want all these, but it's too hot. It's too heavy. I don't know what it is, but I don't want all those. And it's okay, because usually there wasn't that exchange. So you have to really sort of give it spiritually and allow the bigger universe to say, that's okay. We'll take that off of you. And allow the universe to do that, and for you to witness that, and to then have growth. In other words, where you saw your negative pattern sort of taking you down. To what degree can you go, hands off? Even I know better. Maybe you've been procrastinating. And then just own it, and then get used to those little moments, and then sort of raise yourself from your own inner child. This is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today, and I hope that these videos do help. Please share, please subscribe, and for goodness sake, please donate for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support. Peace out. Have a beautiful day. Be well and be safe. And know that you can be your own little inner victor today. Just know and just be. And just know and just be. And gratitude and acceptance. And just allow yourself to work with those feelings and breathe the positive into that quantum field, and just let go of that negative cycle and just allow it to sort of flow away. You got this. Have a beautiful day.